anybody doesn't know me, I'm David Nichols. I run a business called Custom Pearl Inlay, and we inlay everything for everybody. We've been doing this for what seems like ever. And many years ago, I was the original custom shop for C.F. Martin. You coming in, or?
I haven't made up my mind yet.
He's not in the commitment.
Let me take one more look, okay? Okay, there we were, David Nichols, Custom Pearl Inlay in Malone, New York. And as I said many years ago, this older gentleman came to me and he said, David, I've got this idea. Martin hasn't produced a D45 in an awful lot of years, and I think that I could talk them into doing it. And I'd like you to come and do the pearl work. That was Mike Longworth. So Mike went down and sweet-talked Grandpa Martin, who was probably one of the finest men I have ever met in my life, and we started being the pearl inlay business for them. And it was during that very similar area, carrying on from there, where they also decided that maybe it was time to make a voiced top guitar again. And there were several of the old-timers involved in that, including myself. This is back when I was actually younger. And the archives and research and everything, I have studied how Martin used to. I have tops off of Martin guitars from pretty much every year. How long have I been building guitars? I built my first guitar in 1959. So it's been a while, and we average about 40 guitars a year out of the shop. I teach guitar building. We have a class where you come in the morning, Monday morning, and walk out Friday playing a guitar, which you built, and it's really a joy. But one of the things that I like to emphasize is that when we're building a guitar, I don't use templates for the bracing or anything else. I have a method for putting the bracing together on the top of a guitar that is going to work and going to basically mimic the 1930s Martin, because that's the sound that my ears like. I have a bluegrass band, so I'm used to that kind of music. Plus I play a little swinging jazz. But this is a special top. Okay, it's special because you can see through it, and it allows me to show you what I feel is extremely important. Now, everybody knows that Adirondack spruce is the best spruce for tops, right? Do you know why people think that?
Cheap.
Marketing.
No, there's a serious answer to this too, okay? And this all goes along with when you're doing top bracing, it's nice to have a clue of what it is you're aiming at. Back when Martin family was all from Germany, and guess what kind of spruce they were used to using? German spruce. Back in the early 30s, welcome, we had a war with Germany, and they couldn't get, taking him? Okay, you can go. I've done this every year, so it doesn't matter. They had a war with Germany, so they couldn't get German spruce anymore. So they, through some quirk of fate, wound up with northern Adirondack spruce. If you had a Martin guitar of the early 30s, you can trade it for a house. I mean, that is not a joke. So, at any rate, the Adirondack spruce was wonderful because it grew in clumps, so it grew very slowly, and it grew through the northern winters, which meant that the growing season was small, so the growth rings weren't really big. Okay, and that's in spruce what you're looking for is a lot of people want wide, but if you want maximum strength, you want narrow, at least in the middle of what you're doing. Now this in keeping with my talk, and I'm going to sell this when I'm done, is Adirondack spruce, I'm sure, because I bought it it's at a purchase from Adirondack Hardware. Whenever we make guitars, every bit of spruce that I use, I label where in the Adirondacks it came from, because a lot of people think the Adirondack chain runs from here to Virginia, and Adirondack spruce from where I live, where it's routinely 40 below in the winter, to Adirondack spruce in Virginia are two different species of wood. They're all both red spruce, but anyhow, so much for the BS. I have several concerns when I'm building a guitar. One of them is, of course, it has to sound good, but it also has to last. So we have to balance between structural strength and tonal quality. That makes sense, doesn't it? Now, if you stop and think about what's going on the guitar for stress, the strings on the guitar are constantly trying to do two things. One, pull the neck off it, right? And two, pull the neck into it. Anybody got any idea of how much pressure there is on a 6-string steel string?
180. 180.
Well, there's approximately 30 pounds pull per string. Okay? So you're looking at about 180 pounds. I mean, that's me. 180 pounds trying to split this top. What direction does the grain run? Okay? What direction is this trying to split? Do you ever see a guitar where it's split here and here? I mean, that's one of the common repairs that I get in my shop. Now, in order to affect this top so that this thing and the strings can't split it, this is referred to as a popsicle stick brace. It's flat, it's cross-grained to the top, and it is extremely important in preventing that cracking. Okay? If you take it out, the guitar will sound better. And I'll make $550 when I put the new top on your guitar. But at any rate, that takes care of this stress on the top. So that's a very, very important brace. Next is, the neck is trying to do that, isn't it? Look at where this one has its strength. That makes sense? It's right up near that sound hole, and there is its strength. Okay? Now, those are serious concerns of mine, those two braces. These next three, under the sound hole, the rosette is cut over halfway through the top. The rosette material is generally 90 thousandths of an inch. The top's 110. You know how much wood you got left behind that, and how much strength you've got, and if you've got somebody that, you know, a lot of people wrap, pound, what have you. Those are extremely important to protect this area from splitting. Make sense? Okay, now then, we've got everything else going on this guitar, and we're going to have these strings, and the main pull is going to be right here, isn't it? And because the main pull is right there, I want the X brace. See how it goes over the corner of the bridge and captures it? I call that capturing the bridge. And in a see-through top, this is pretty easy to see. You see these side tone bars? You see how they catch the other corner of the bridge? I have captured this bridge to prevent rotational torque from destroying the top or tearing it off. Make sense so far? Down here, I've got a whole lot of wood that is grain one direction, and these two tone bars are going to give me the strength. Now, and I'm only talking strength at this time. I'm not talking sound yet, okay? But I'm going to get into sound rather shortly. If we look at a guitar top from the inside, wouldn't this be the center of where the sound is coming in? Makes sense, doesn't it? If that's the center and this thing works like a radio speaker, you see where these aren't going to influence the sound one iota because they're out of the area of what we're dealing with. Radio speakers can be oval. The original people that designed the X bracing for the guitar were the sound engineers that also designed the original radio speakers. Remember back, this pattern is from real early 30s, okay? And at that time, they didn't have a lot of amplification, they didn't have much of anything other than these sound engineers that researched how to, and they didn't have today's modern computers, they didn't have all of the BS, they didn't have anything else that goes on. They were working with cold hard facts and maybe a scope or something of the sort. But if you take a Marshall top, and here is a top that has labels, just so we can, see what's going on. But if you look at a top, and I think a lot of people have lost sight of the fact, if that's the center, see the peak on that brace, 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 that brace. You see what I'm talking about? And this is what gives this top the ability to, I'm talking straight sound now, that gives this top the ability to be a sound pump. That makes sense? And I'll do that again just to show you. There is where the center where this coming in. There's the point on that brace. Point, 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 point. And they're not, it's not an absolutely perfect circle. But what it is, it's close enough to be a perfect circle to allow this top to be a sound pump. And that's something that that concept has eluded an awful lot of people. Now, if it works so well, if this sounding, and it did, as I say, the 30s Martins, the early 30s Martins, a couple $100,000 is nothing if it's in good shape, because that guitar projects and sounds and was strong enough. At that time, here's another sound theory, okay? They didn't have much in the way of amplification, and engineers knew that, and the general public found out that the volume a string will produce is directly, Hi, Keila, you said you weren't going to be here.
I didn't say that.
Oh, God, I'm so glad that you're here. Keila, over here. This is Idi Amin's daughter. I got lost in where I was, but what I was talking about strings. Okay?
Engineer something you said.
Don't break it.
You were talking about sound and how there wasn't amplification.
It wasn't, yes, and we're talking about the strings. People found that the mass of the string directly related to the volume of the guitar. The bigger the string, the more volume you got from it. Mass equals volume in terms of string talking, okay? So, opportunistic. Somebody owned the Mapes String Company at that time. Mapes, huh? Mapes Strings Company. Mapes was the first company to come out with a heavy and an extra heavy gauge string. And that gave these guitars a volume that, it's like listening to me talk. You don't need to wonder, okay? That worked unbelievably well. They also tore the top off every old Martin. And what happened at that point, and this again is not a joke, in somewhere in 1938-39, when this came out, Martin said, we're going to be killed on warranty. So they quit voicing the tops. And the minute they quit voicing the top was then strong enough to be able to put up with extra heavies. It didn't have the volume, it didn't have the spectrum of tone. I mean, one thing about a voice top, it's like having a stereo that has wonderful highs and wonderful lows.
What's the maximum size strings you can put on yours?
On my own, my guitars are all built for nowadays, guitars are built for mediums because nobody has heavies, okay? I personally build so that I'm sure that my guitars can take mediums, and I'm building them light enough so that if you want to put on lights, you'll still have a decent sound. I forgot the name of that Vermont town already.
Belvedere. Belvedere.
Thank you. See, it's nice to know that everybody's paying attention. So, anyway, that's the beginning story on braced and not braced, or voiced and not voiced.
I'm a little confused on you said they stopped voicing their guitars. Did you mean they stopped taking the time to do
Scalping.
turning and all that? Because I'm so new at this, so when I think somebody
Okay,
say voicing,
now-
I hear
this,
Carving and tapping, carving and tapping.
okay, there's no carving, tapping generally speaking going on.
Okay.
Okay. When they stopped voicing, when they were voicing the guitars, the bracing was, it's much more delicate than this, but there was another key that Martin used, okay? Every single brace was notched into the one that it touched. The bridge plate notched into the X brace. Every tone bar, or any one of these, notched in. And what that did is it gave you a continuity of ability to pass sound. It was like in the radio speaker, every little ridge is connected to the next one, okay, solidly. So that was another key that they had. There's a problem with notching in the bracing. You have to change a bridge plate every, sometime during a guitar's life probably, and you can't get it out if it's notched into the X. Or if the top is pulled up on you, it's just brutal to repair. One of the things I have found that makes an extreme amount of difference is every brace I put in is solidly touching and glued to the brace next to it. That makes sense?
Not notched.
Huh?
Not notched.
Not notched, no. No notch. One of the other things, as I say, so much has been lost over the years. And Martin, and most people nowadays, you're using a template to lay out the braces. And when you use a template, and you have to have some spaces, see the space my finger's pointing to? I don't want that space there. This is the main spot the voice is coming into the guitar. Wouldn't I want it touching right around to transmit the sound? Make sense? So, anyhow, that's the beginnings of voice bracing and not voice bracing. And if I'm building a guitar, I don't start out with braces that look like this. Okay? One of the tricks, one of the keys, one of the important things, remember I said to you, here's the center and there's the circle. I always build my top with bracing that is not voiced, it's basically shaped, and that's it. And then I'll take my sides and I'll trace exactly what's going to be inside of those sides. At that point, I know if I center my points on where these tone bars really are ending, that I've got to start here, and I've got a pretty good visual for where every single point wants to be. Does that make sense? And how do I do that? I have two tricks in my shop. This is a little brass finger plane, and I couldn't live without that little bugger. It's flat-soled, not curved, and boy will it shape bracing. It does just the most wonderful job of pyramiding, when I'm shaping a brace, and I'm teaching it, I say you start up here, and you go poof, poof, and it's that fluid motion of your arm that is going to give you that fluid curve. And it's not a joke. I have this down on the table, of course, I'm just holding it up here, but it's a full, beautiful art that way. If I'm using my chisel for something, I use a chisel different from an awful lot of people. I hold it with a taper side down, and I just rotate it, and there's no forward pressure, so I can't slip and ruin the top. All my pressure is down, and I can take off curls or whatever amount I want. It's all based on this hand is solid, and this is being held down into the wood, and the arc of the curve is what moves it forward. Golly, right?
Yes.
You got that golly look. So, anyhow, say I'm going to build a guitar. And I haven't built a guitar this week yet, but what the heck. First thing I'm going to need is braces. Chisel. Anybody ever see this kind of a sandpaper jig? I am not a CNC person. Tony DiDomenico is the one that made these for me. And There's the back brace and the top brace, and all I do when I'm working with my bracing is I go to my table saw and rip out the width that I want, 5/16 basically. I know there's a beginning. And while that is perfectly square, and just a rectangle, I hold it about the middle, and I go to my belt sander, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I turn it around and count 5 on the other, and then when I go here, if you do this often enough, and after the first one, you will find that you can come right from that belt sander. It's amazing if you're used to holding it at the same place and using about the same amount of pressure, how really accurate you can be. Then I just hold the taper there, not on the belt sander, this is taper there, and a little bit of roll just to get me started. After I've cut them, I have a little miter right back saw, which is unbelievably simple. This comes from model airplane company, these little things. And how easy it is to mark, I'll just mark where I want the beginning edge of my cut. And I take the second one, make a pencil line, my first mark, my second mark. And there it is. Zip down halfway and pull out the X. So I've got this thing that will go together that way or that way. And
What's your aim?
pardon?
What angle are you aiming for?
I am exactly halfway between 80 and 95.
Okay.
And I,
That's quite a bit of,
huh?
that's quite a range.
No, I'm exactly halfway between 80 and 95.
In other words, 87.5.
Okay, now, a long time ago, Bob Fair, who was one of the old Martin people, we used to travel all the time. We used to put in strap pins for people. And I said, Bob, what size drill do we need? One size smaller than an 1/8. I have never forgotten. If he told me, whatever that size is, 30 or whatever it might be, I would never remember it. But for strap pins, you use one size smaller than an 1/8. For this angle, it's exactly halfway between 80 and 85.
Oh, 80 and 85.
Yeah.
82.5.
Yes! Really? See, but would you remember 82.5? Probably not. But if you set your miter saw exactly halfway between, it's a lot of times we remember with a little humor better than we remember
Isn't it
other
harder, at
facts.
least for the little
So-
old lady, remembering two numbers, 80 and 85? I have two chances to forget. Whilst 82.5, I have only one chance to forget.
She doesn't know the town in Vermont either of them. Okay, I'm going to brace the top. Okay, here's the top. What's the most important thing for me to think about when I'm bracing a top? The center line. Everything we're going to do has to relate to the center line on that top, because if it ain't all centered up, it ain't going to play, intonation ain't going to be there, nothing's going to be there, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is, you see this top has a little bit of a, when I'm gluing up my tops in the rough, I offset them 1/8 of an inch, either side, and then I always, you can see, and I draw the lines on and I don't screw it with it until after it's sanded. So I'll find my glasses, find a pencil. I am going to brace this top. First thing first, a center line. Now, I need to have something for reference so that I can make things come out right. Is there anything I could figure out and have as a reference point? Duh. Yes, there is. The light just went on. It wasn't Bainbridge, was it? No. Well, I can't help myself. This top has, if I'm making tops, I put in a couple of locator holes, because if I can, once I've located this beauty, and I know how thick my sides are, I can find the leading edge of the guitar. Ta-da. This is so much easier laying down. Not me, although this week I could lay down anywhere. Okay, I have just established the leading edge of the guitar. Does that tell me anything I need to know? I'll bet it does. Where does the fretboard cross the leading edge? Yep. So I now have the ability to do two things. If I'm using one of these neck blocks, I'm going to sketch in where that hole is in it, and the end of it. And I'm going to take it off of there, and I'm going to take this fingerboard, and I've marked the 14th fret on it, and I'm going to line that 14th fret up with one of those two lines, and I don't know why there's two lines there. I've got a line that that line I didn't put there. There's one there that sometimes when you're working with something from Martin, you get lost. Okay, I put the 14th fret on that line, and then I'll bet I can find out exactly where that bridge is going to be. Does that make sense to you? What I'm going to do is really simple. I'm going to lay it down here, 14th fret on that, right on that line exactly. I'm going to put the bridge down here, and I'm going to take the golden rule. And the golden rule says, look, it says 25.4 right there. And I'm going to lay it on here. And I'm going to even it up there, and I'm going to put the center of the saddle right under that line. And then I'm going to put a little mark right, that's the leading edge of the bridge. Make sense? And then I'm going to find, I am going to find it, aren't I? A square, plastic square. Anyway, here's going to be something. And you could use anything for a square. And I'm going to go up to that line, and I'm going to put a straight line for the leading edge of the bridge. Then I'll take the bridge and lay it on there, and I'm going to center it on the bridge pin holes, or I could measure center to center with a centering rule or a pair of dividers. And I'm going to draw the bridge, and actually I'm going to check it for square right here. Because I have a philosophy. Errors are cumulative. Perfection isn't. I don't want to introduce any errors. Boy, do they add up in a hurry. There is my bridge location. If I know the bridge location, and I want to use the Nichols capture the bridge routine, what a great way to go about it. Make sense?
Suppose your 14th fret isn't exactly at the end of there where you did. I mean, I know you put the 14th fret when you do the neck, and suppose it's off a 30 seconds or so.
If it's off, okay, if it's, remember, I'm striving for perfection. If when I put my neck in, is what you're talking about. Okay. If you're using any of the normal routines where you locate the fingerboard with a couple of roll pins on the neck, it ain't going to be off. I mean, it'd be very difficult. But even if it were a little bit, when I get all done, my bridge goes on last on the outside. And imagine I'm off a 30 second. I'm still going to be pretty close to the ballpark, aren't I? Because I'm 5. You missed the best part of it, but I'm still doing it.
I'm just seeing if you're on TV. So.
I'm on TV.
Thank you, Glenn. Here I am.
So, okay, sir. Happy anniversary yesterday.
Yeah. 42 plus 1 today.
That old fart's older than me. His birthday's in January, mine's in April. So what I'm doing is I'm centering this X brace. I'm capturing the bridge as captured as I can capture it. And I'm trying to be quite exact. And while I'm there with that in place, bridge plate. That's cut to fit exactly to that same angle as that X brace. So now I have, and I don't want to move it too much, but I've got the X brace located and the bridge plate in place. If I tilt it, it's going to fall off.
Which one do you glue up first? The X-brace or the bridge plate?
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's a reasonable answer. Now, I'll jump that much forward for a second. My gluing methods are different from. In my shop, I try to figure what is the best, most repeatable, least expensive way I can do something. Because I'm teaching guitar building, and I've been in this for close to 60 years. And everybody doesn't have all the tools I do. All of my molds I made, all of my bending things I made. Everything in my shop you can see how to make that part. When it comes to gluing, I'm using vacuum bag gluing because you can't beat it for absolute even pressure. So I'm gluing everything at once. Okay? I spread my glue on my braces, I put them down, I masking tape them in place, and I slide this whole thing into my vacuum bag setup. It's that thick board with a vacuum bag all around it. You slide your thing in, you put a clamp on the end of the bag, and there's 30 inches of vacuum. And I can take my vacuum bag, I can take 2 pieces of wood and a piece of 1/2-inch plywood, span it and break the plywood. That's the kind of pressure I've got
You
in
use
there, okay?
all the way up to 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
I run 110 pounds in. It's a vacuum products, quality vacuum products. And the whole entire system runs you about $550. And by the time you bought a go bar deck and all the go bars, and then you pick up the one that shoots over there, and then you whoops, the blue slid, and whoops, and the pressure, no pressure, pressure, no pressure.
Yeah.
This works. One of the guitars I've made as compared to a go bar glued up guitar, mine will sound better out of the gate than the other one because the break-in period is so much less. And before I forget to tell you this, my other thing that I do, when I'm building guitars that I want to be proud of, when I buy my Adirondack spruce that I'm going to use, I resaw what I want for tops and I save all of the rest, and every one of my log links are painted on the end, a color. I save all the scraps. When I make my braces, the yellow scraps go for bracing, that yellow bracing goes with that yellow top. My tops, my bracing are from the same tree, not just the same species. We're talking absolute consistency and density so that I can have immediate sound. It'll get better, but it's not too shabby to start with. So I lay out that bracing, and if I had, one of the fine things about being away from home is you don't have what you want. I take my sanding block. I've got just regular square sanding block, yay long and yay wide, and I take this thing. When you notice I move the wood, not the sandpaper, and I can come up with that angle, which is perfectly backwards. I mean, not even close. I mean, it's exactly the right angle, but it's perfectly backwards. This is not the easiest thing on a curved sanding surface, but there's my first tone bar. Second tone bar is going to be the same routine.
What kind of glue are you using? to
I'm
glue
using
it?
Tite Bond glue because I like it. Tite Bond glue does several things for me. One, it holds until I don't want it to. Two, I can get it apart if I do want to, okay? And that to me is, can I rectify something? Yes. How do I get it apart? It can't stand heat or shock. If I take a brace I want to move, lay my chisel and just rap, I'm not trying to chisel it off, it's just a shock, glue will fail.
So you're referring to the original Tite Bond?
Or Tite Bond 2.
Okay.
I heard, now I can't back this statement up, but I heard that they're made in the same vat. And I don't find any difference between Tite Bond 1, Tite Bond 2, and Tite Bond something. I'm using, it may be Tite Bond 2 at this point, but it's whatever the hardware store has in, and it works for me. So I level all my braces on here. The big brace is going to go right just past the, whatever it is here. Let me just draw these in, because there's a couple of considerations. My first tone bar touches my bridge plate. My second tone bar comes off of exactly where the peak is going to be on that scalp brace. And I wish I could do this with it all standing up, but if I draw it on there and then show it to you, you'll see it in a second. The side tone bars, these babies, first one captures the bridge corner. Make sense? Comes right in, and don't forget, they touch. They touch in here. Everything is not only touching, but when I glue it up, it's glued. That's glued to that, it's glued to that. I mean, I'm gluing edges and everything. And I'm holding still for a minute, because there.
Official business, you know?
That's it, official. So, this, I'm just going to pass it on. Don't flex it, because you can, they're double stick taped on. And this is the one time I've made braces that are flat so that I can stick them down. But if you have that in your hands, you can get a chance to just peek whilst I am doing a little bit more drawing here. The little tiny side tone bars are at 90 degrees to the X brace. The second one on the same side that the big tone bars are connecting is exactly centered on them, between the two of them. This one captures the bridge on this here side.
How do you establish the angle that the tone bars come off the X brace? I mean, the first one touches the
These right
bridge
here?
plate.
The big tone
Yeah,
bars?
yeah.
I am copying one of the, on my own, I've copied an old Martin top that I
Okay.
had. And this, I make my X brace at the right angle, and then I use that as my measurement for my here to here, okay?
Yeah, so the first tone bar, that edge touches the edge of the bridge plate.
Yes, this is supposed to touch here.
Right, and then establishing the angle of it,
This angle, what angle do I establish it at?
so that the bottom end of it, knowing where it ends up.
Yeah. This is part of a visual to me, okay? And you'll notice that it's in slightly on that brace.
Okay.
Here, start that one around that way. Hi. Did you bring any apples? I guess not.
Temptress.
Dave, could you point out what you're talking about when you say the peak of the
Yep. The peak of
Is
the,
it this thing?
yep,
Not this?
no.
Okay,
The
thanks.
peak is the raised portion on that, on the brace.
You just need this parallel to this, the peak of the.
And are you making your outside peaks of your tone bars, do they always, once you lay out your center line and your bridge position, is it always inside that arc? that passes through the center of your sound hole?
Basically, yes. It's, the arc is sometimes a little bit of an oval, okay, as I go around, but even, let me just, when I'm just gonna, there's no easy way to do that. I'm just gonna drop the whole damn thing, and then you'll have a photograph of it.
Oh, yeah, do.
Can I see that for just a second, just so I can answer, and I'll give it right back to you, I won't hang on to it forever. When you're making your own, you will have a picture of where the bridge is for openers, all right? And when you're placing your bracing, if you can see the bridge, then you're going to be able to see where the upper small tone bars sit. Don't think of this one up here, see how it comes off the corner of the bridge? So I can place that one right from the drawing that I put on the top. Does that make sense?
Always parallel to the X-brace.
And perpendicular. My X-brace,
No, parallel this way.
No, they're perpendicular to this X-brace.
Well, yeah, but
No.
it's parallel to the other.
It really isn't parallel to the other one because that X-brace is not 90 degrees. And I left out one line here, which I'm going back and hopefully just put right on so that. Anyway, this I can pass around to. I'm going to put one more bit of a drawing here. That has to go there. And with every single brace, if it's sideways, it has to be square to the center line. And a little popsicle stick brace. I get such a kick out of people that say that if you take out the popsicle stick brace, your guitar will sound better, simply because that is so far out of the realm of the vibration of the top that you don't have much of a prayer to tell me better.
In Collins Building one of the Waterloos without the popsicle.
Pardon?
I think in Collins building one like that now.
It could very well be, but I hope he doesn't get snowed with cracks that come right down through. Collins is one of my favorite guitars. I mean, they are traditional. They are extremely concerned about their product and their customer. And I do quite a bit of inlay for them. So anyway, this is going around next, and it wiggled a little on me, but there is where the top bracing goes based on finding the leading edge of the guitar, and I found that by hooking up, where's our plastic top? This goes with that plastic top. And I just wanted to continue to pass it around, but let me just, let's see, as long as we don't flex that too much, it's double stick taped. There, now, remember my leading edge? And that is where I started making this thing. And you can see this brace locates itself via that. The next brace is midway between the sound hole and the end up. And wherever it left off.
So David, if you wanted a forward shifted X or something like that, would you change
I
the
really-
angle?
If
the
I
X?
had room and it wasn't so precious to me, I'd have bought one of my early 30s tops, because on that top, I say to people, here's the sound hole and here's the X. There's an inch. Okay? There's so much of the things that you read aren't technically correct, unfortunately. And if you want to advance the X brace, okay, change the angle slightly. You have to capture the bridge. If you want it to be 1 inch up here, shrink the angle a little teeny bit. Now,
Do you mean this angle?
yes, that angle, right. That makes sense?
Yes.
So if you're altering, if you're building in a, like a J200 form or
Yeah, that's-
or a Dreadnought form, but you're changing your scale length, so your choice is to either move the X-brace down to capture the wings or close the angle. Do you have a preference which you think is better if you're changing scale lengths?
Well, I don't, I'm still maintaining this X. When I change scale lengths and I'm doing the measurements with, remember the sound hole's in a different place too. Everything is different, but everything still relates to either the 12th or the 14th fret, and it relates to the bridge placement. Yeah, I don't care. The dimension between here and here isn't as important to me as the fact that I have the bridge at the exact location and the X-brace capturing it. I have moved over the years, I mean, as you might well imagine, I have tried a lot of moving. Some things you move, I couldn't ever hear a difference. Other things, you can hear the difference. And I've made samples with no top plate. It's so out of the vibration spectrum. Plus, it's past that thing, which is going to stop any kind of vibration in the world anyway. Okay. I also in the shop, and from years back, have a Peterson strobe, which is the old-fashioned way of measuring things. And it, when I've made movements on tops, I've tried moving my tone bars. I've got them, that one has to capture the bridge. This one doesn't make as much difference, but on mine, I center this brace between these two in terms of I've got all this grain that I want to protect. And I'm always thinking on two levels. How am I going to get the maximum sound? And if I don't have the structural strength, it doesn't matter. I mean, my very first concern is if it's not strong enough to maintain itself, then it isn't going to work. Yes, sir.
So the first thing you did when you located the bridge was you did it to the center of the saddle.
Yes.
And I was just confused as to why it wasn't at the location of the eastern, because the compensation comes off of that.
Well, let me tell you about, that's a good question, and this will probably explain that to you, okay? This is called the golden rule, and how could I ever make a golden rule that I really liked? Well, there's several ways you can do this. You can go into logarithms and your computer and, advanced math and science, or you can go take a brand new Martin guitar out of stock, which, check the intonation. Is that one perfect? Okay, butt that up against the nut and scribe right there in the middle of the saddle at that angle. Okay? So then I have, without any thought process on my part for figuring, an exact 25.4, where does it belong? Now, in theory, okay, in theory, 25.4 is the whole scale length. The 12th fret should be half of that. You should go not to 12 times 2 and have it work. But it doesn't, because there's a compensating factor in there of about 1/8 of an inch. And that's about. But if you have a guitar, if you have one similar to what you're building, and you're using that scale length, it's easy to make yourself. And of course, it has to be gold. Because otherwise it would just be like silver rules or something else. Does that make sense on how to and why I go to the center?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I
Yes, but
understand what you did.
This is angled and it is in this, and it's right down the center of the fingerboard and right in the center of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And for that part, before I'm actually putting the bridge on, this is the point where I'm determining where the bridge is going to be. And my whole thought process is, if I can stay within, that's not a hard thing to stay within.
So you made the bridge first then?
Well, I've got the bridges that I'm using are
Standard.
pre-made, or if I'm going to make it, I've got my milling machine set up to, do that.
And how much in compensation are we dealing with? And I guess it would matter what kind of player you have, and how high action they like, and all that stuff, but, or is there a standard compensation you build in?
As I said, I take a guitar that has been computer designed,
Yeah,
and I like the intonation on it.
right.
And I measure that guitar, okay? And that gives me a wonderful starting point. Do I believe in compensating a saddle slope is one thing, but carving it backward and forward and here, you can't move that enough where a normal person's ear can hear it. I mean, that's just a given. Again, I'm prejudiced to early 30s guitars and 40s and what have you. They never compensated the saddle. And they never had anybody arguing about, okay? And they might have been 0.0006 cents off. That's, you can't hear 2 cents, 2 whole cents with your ear.
You said earlier that you copied the old Martin.
Yeah.
What year is that, Martin? Because I'm old.
You are.
Yeah, but
I
I'm
got children your
wondering,
age.
what year is the old Martin actually?
I have a top of 35.
Okay, more.
Yes. I have in my shop, because I teach guitar building, and because I get a lot of people come in with internet knowledge, I have in the back room, my shop is pretty big, and in the back room I've got up in the ceiling dowel rods sticking out like about this, and on those dowel rods are all the tops. And I have tops off of everything you've ever seen. I can show you the year that Martin quit voicing them. I can show you why they quit voicing them, because you can see where the top is torn apart. I can show you when Gibson copied them, after they sued Gibson for copying them. I can show you the double X brace Gibson come out with a plywood bridge plate. I can show you, I have Gibson through the years. I have Martin through the years. And what a great learning, not teaching, but learning tool for me, so that when I go to teach, or if I want to discuss with somebody that, you have to show me, because I'm from Missouri, and there's a lot of Missouri people nowadays.
By the way, I've taken his classes. He gives classes in inlay, and he gives class in building a guitar. Just want to say it's really worth the freight. He doesn't charge that much for it. He's very conscientious with it. It's worth it to take that class. It changes the way you think. And the most valuable thing I learned in those 2 weeks with you was how to properly use a chisel. Made my life different. Stick it straight, sort of slide, just little things like that change.
I have developed some of these methods over the years, and as I said, my whole key is what is the simplest, most effective way that I can do it in a repetitive manner and show you how to do it, so that, my secret philosophy in life is that I don't want to die with any secrets. I've been doing this for 1,000,000 years, it seems, and I don't want to not have passed down everything I can, because who knows, one of these days I won't be here, and the only thing left is what I taught.
And he says, when you start the class, he'll say, there are no stupid questions. Then 3 days later, I asked a question, and he went, moron!
You have to know him to appreciate that.
You said that at some point Martin stopped voicing their tops, I guess when they,
Yes.
I'm not sure when they, I'm a classical maker, so if I sound totally ignorant, you're hearing correctly, but anyway, so did they stop voicing them when they stopped, I guess, scalloping the braces?
That's what I'm talking about.
And
Voicing
I'm
and
wondering-
scalping are interchangeable words to me.
Why is it, why can't a non-scalloped pattern be voiced to its own character and its own personality? It's a social justice question. Equal rights for non-scalloped braces. I'm just wondering, and I'm wondering, what is your approach? I mean, do you also not voice because it's not scalloped?
Well, let me start by saying voicing and scalping to me are identical terms, okay? If I'm going to voice the top, scalping is how I voice it. On a guitar, I'm talking. Okay, on a mandolin, I'm voicing a top with sander, a sanding disc, and a plate behind it for looking at density and all that shit. But on a guitar, I voice the top by carving it so that it can react just like a big radio speaker. It has an area of flexibility built in and centered upon that bridge. And if that's where the sounds, like a radio speaker has a cone in the center, right? And that's where the sound emanates. And then the waves come out. And that's exactly the way I look at a guitar top.
Aren't there exactly, or actually two cones then? You've got the cone that's prescribed by points of your braces. Then you have the rim of the guitar as well.
Yes.
So don't you actually have kind of two cones?
Yes,
that are working with
yes,
each other?
yes, you would. But by the same token, once you have established, remember this dreadnought shape is kind of round where it needs to be round to do that, okay? And once you've established a flexible, then the next level of that flexibility out is just like, think of that radio speaker, you get all the little wedges, and then it flattens out, doesn't it? If you've seen an old radio speaker. And that's part of what's going on. We've got a treble, high flex, and I'll use backwards. We've got a bass, which is the longer moves, and the treble, which is the shorter moves out toward the side. So we're balancing bass against treble.
So is there a relationship between where that inner cone is relative to the rim?
My outer scalping that's an approximation of where the points are to the outside edge, okay? And when I'm doing them, as I say, a lot of what I'm doing, I don't sit and measure anymore because I've made so damn many of them, and I've learned to look and judge what it is that I'm doing. But you're welcome to take a measurement off of, these are a bit unreliable because the actual side is going to be in where my thumbs are. Does that make sense? Sure. And that point from the side, you're looking at about 3 inches. I think that look like 3 inches to you. How long do I have here? Does anybody know?
15 more minutes.
Okay.
Do you notch any of the braces into the curving inside?
I notch, yes. Okay, thank you. When I'm talking, I have the side all lined up for curve landing. The X brace, all 4 corners, and this brace are going to be notched into the curve. What is my reasoning? My reasoning is very simple. I also need strength in that direction, okay? Because besides all the strings trying to tear it off, you've got the arms, the slaps, the cuffs, the drop it, everything else. So that's covered right out to the end, and the curve landing is holding it up. Both 4 corners of the X and this big one, which is countering the fingerboard trying to pull in.
You notch them fully through the curving, or 1/8 inch, or?
I notch it fully through the curving.
So you're putting the notch in the curving.
In the curving, not the
So you're
side.
stopping just short of the side?
I'm stopping at the side.
Okay.
Now, again,
It's not even 5 minutes.
oh, God. I'm using a special curving that I love because, I'm just looking at what I'm going to draw it on her with. I got my pencil right here. Watch this. Thank you. God, this is special. Normal curve plane. That's a cross section of it. Do we agree? The minute I glue it on and sand into it, the minute I sand in, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, depending. And I don't care how good you are. When you go to sand, you're going to take off some curve lining. The curve lining I use is called double angle.
Might see it, Daddy.
It comes down out square and then tapers. I can sand into my curve lining. I've drawn the square part a little longer than normal, but I can sand into this one And it does not get narrower. You sand this one, you sand in, and you don't have to sand much to drop some serious width, right? That one I can sand in, it's called double angle kerf. Why do they call it kerf lining, kerf lining? Because all the saw cuts are saw kerfs.
You make your own kerf lining or you buy that?
Yes. That's serious answer. I buy it when I can, and if I don't have what I want, I make it. I mean, my workshop is big.
Yeah.
And I have the ability to do things.
Why are the tone bars, the long tone bars, always parallel? You know, if you're thinking about terms of, you know, voicing a top, and it's a combination of structure and transferring sound around in patterns of stiffness. Why are they always parallel?
They're
like that?
parallel because if you look, see where my points go because of the parallelness? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
That's why I got here and here, because there is the point, the point, the point, the point that I want, right around.
Okay.
Okay, so the X brace and the number one brace, what's the height of the brace as it goes into the curve? What is
Where it goes into the kerf lining?
Yeah, but what's the height of that?
This is about where I'm going to wind up, and it is, take a look.
An eighth of an inch?
Yeah, eighths or slightly less. And my notch is going to match it as close as I can, because I'm counting on that notch to give me some support underneath it. Now, I said I go completely through the kerf line, and I don't go through the sides. When I'm routing for binding, a lot of times I'll come up and see the end of my notch. And if I do, and this is one of those things you learn the hard way. If you see the end of that binding, you've got any little gap there, and you're using ivoid binding and Duco cement will go into that gap, and it'll sit there until it eats a hollow into your binding after a week or so. I always use some of my quick set epoxy to fill any minor gaps.
So you don't glue the end of the brace onto the side itself?
No. No, well, in effect I do, because when I put it in, that's where it's fitted. Because what I will do is I'll make my top, I take the sides, and I set the top on the sides, okay? Clamp, and go with my pencil and put a line on the outside, and then move in the thickness of the sides, and saw it off, take the chisel and pop it off.
But I'm saying it's not a glue joint between
It
the sides.
is, but an unintentional glue joint, because when I glue it together, it gets glued. Yeah, from the squeeze out, it'll glue itself together.
So you were saying that your braces were 5/16 thick to start with?
Yes.
Then you scallop them. Is there a general rule about, like, how tall is it at the X and
I don't
how tall
wanna
they
go
might
down-
be?
I don't want to go down less than a little over an eighth of an inch in the middle if I'm going to be using medium strings. You know, I
In
don't
the
want to go
trough
thinner
of
than.
You mean
of
in the scallop?
Yes, of my scalp.
Okay.
But how tall is the brace itself, you know, like at the X?
Exactly that much.
Okay. I got
According to
you.
my ruler, which the numbers are all worn off of.
Golden rule?
Yeah, golden. These are starting out at a ½ inch. So. And, you know, when I'm making bracing, I make it all mass, and usually I'll have, as I told you, I paint the ends of my scraps and that I've cut off of the things when we're sewing tops, and leave my color on it so I can have color to color.
By the way, I've measured a lot of calipers inside of a lot of Martins, and a lot of them at the high point of the X are around 6.35, which is over half an inch,
Yeah.
but less than 3/4.
Any other, oh, yes.
Yeah, I hope I'm not chased out of the room for asking this, but I went to a workshop, ukuleles, and the guy said that he just goes to Home Depot and checks all the 2x4s and finds some with some nice straight lines in it and cuts all his bracing out of that. What do you think of that?
You can you can use anything when the grain direction is right. When you're making bracing, and you look at the end of the brace, the grain wants to stand up, okay? And when you're using something this size, and you take a board you're gonna cut it out of, most of the stuff I'm dealing with is quarter sawn, because I'm saving time. But if it was flat sawn, I turn the other
Yeah, well,
direction.
that's what I mean, but
Yeah.
you don't have any problem, because you're talking about making sure you have the wood from the same tree and all that.
Well, when I'm talking about trying to build guitars for guitar fanatics, and I mean, are we instrument fanatics? Yes, okay. And I'm trying to eliminate some of the BS and tell you some of the things that I do that may be OCD, which means, you know, I wish he'd back off a little. Could I and can I make Adirondack, or Sitka tops with Adirondack bracing? Yes, because I have Adirondack sprues. I make all my bracing out of Adirondack sprues. Does it give me, will it go up against a Sitka top? Yeah, certainly. Does the fact that I'm using same tree bracing and top make a real difference? Does it make a difference to you that my trees come right out of the Adirondacks and I tell you where in the Adirondacks they were cut? And I mean, that's not a joke. If you look at any of the guitars I have on stands in here, I'll show you the sound hole which I have saved, on which I wrote where that tree, where the top came from, what part of the Adirondacks, and when. And
No, I think it's great to do that. I'm just wondering, this guy teaching heresy, or is it?
No, he's not teaching
Yeah.
heresy, he's teaching how to,
Get
not
cheap
everybody
bracing.
has
Yeah.
the access to
Yeah.
certain things. And what can you do that works, that you can get away with? Yeah.
Yeah, all right,
I'd
thanks.
like to address a couple points on that. One, a ukulele is a lot smaller, you
Sure.
get much less torque on it.
Mhm.
It's nylon strings, there are 4 of them. You can get away with all kinds of different neck joints, etc. You can use about anything to get structure in a ukulele.
Mhm.
A guitar with steel strings is a very different animal.
Sure, yeah.
Also, I harvest tone wood, I cut brace wood, whatever, all that stuff. A lot of the old Gibsons in the 30s, the braces break on them, they come out because they weren't quarter sawn. The Martins, you don't have that problem.
Yep.
That'll tell you right there something. You can use different woods as long as your grain orientation is solid and consistent.
Mhm.
And has it been seasoned properly? Pressure
Probably
treated
not.
lumber? No.
Well, it's not pressure treated, but it's just a regular kiln.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, I understand
So,
that.
yes, you can save money on certain things,
Hey, Dave.
but you're costing money
Dave,
on certain
you
things.
dropped one.
You know,
Yeah, but I guess for practical.
Way down there.
It's by your right foot.
It's way down there.
Make a noise.
When you start carving your braces, are you doing any tapping and testing to get any certain ping or something that?
One of the most fun things that I have done with people is to take a top, or not necessarily the top, but to take a set of really kind of good-looking wood and say, listen to the tone, whack, whack, wet cardboard, okay, and come out with a guitar that sounds good. My thoughts on tap toning are, generally speaking, and this is generally speaking, okay? If you're at my shop and we're picking out wood, and I say to you, here's an array of tops that you have to choose from. Pick the top up, pick it here, and listen to it. Pick up the next one and listen. Take the top that appeals to you. If that sound of that wood appeals to you, then we're more apt to make a guitar that the sound will appeal to you.
What about top thickness?
Thickness, I start my tops at 110, and then I'm going to final sand them when I'm done. But my tops are 110, I bend my sides at 90, and my backs are 100.
Do you thin your sides if you're doing a cutaway?
Do I what?
Thin the side in thickness if you're gonna do a cutaway? Instead of 90 thousandths, you know, you go down to 80 or 75 thousandths.
I generally don't.
What's the radius on the top again?
The radius on the tops of mine is 25 foot. The radius on the backs of mine are 12 foot. Now, people will argue between 12 and 13, or 25 and 24, and in that span, I defy you to tell the difference, or to, you know, I mean, there's, yes, I want it perfect, but at some point you have to, I picked this and stuck with it, and try to stay as close to it as I can. I hand make all these things. So is my 25-foot brace going to be 25.4 or 25.2? Or there's a possibility, okay, just from which way you're sanding and pressuring.
Do you have trouble getting the radius brace on there before the vacuum bag, you know, comes down on it and presses it? Because it's arched, it's not going to be fully making contact until the vacuum.
Okay, now I have, the slides right in the vacuum bag with it. I've got the dish that sets it. So everything is laminated to be what you want it to be to start with great hopes and expectations. But as I say, that thing, believe it or not, is, I say, one of the keys to my success.
Where did you get one?
That came out of the Canadian tool company called
Lee Valley.
See?
What is it?
Lee Valley.
Little tiny finger plane.
It's like an Ibex finger plane.
What is the thing you're talking about?
That little finger plane. You use it in my shop. And does everyone understands that plexiglass top is Adirondack, because it came from Adirondack hardware. I didn't put the date. I should have put 2000. This is
Clear stain.
17. Yes. At any rate, this is the kind of thing that I spent a little bit of time putting it together, and I'm going to, somebody here is going to own it. I'm not going to take it home, because next year I'll make another if I'm still 2 years from now. But you notice the rosette and everything is in there. But the neck block with the side thickness piece on there. And while I'm talking about bracing, my side bracing, I believe in side bracing because it will stop side cracks, it will prevent side cracks. A lot of the guitars that are coming out of factories now have one or two on the side, and that doesn't do it for me. I've got 5 side braces on the side.
Of wood?
Of wood.
Is it 5?
There is my side brace.
Typically make them.
Huh?
How thick do you typically make them?
They're cut off the sides or the back, and I can tell them.
Yeah.
And you're not interrupting your curving. You put your curving on.
Yes, the
you
curving
put your
goes on
curving on
first and this
solid, and
goes-
this just goes between the
And this-
curvings.
Yes,
Okay.
and it goes perpendicular to the top.
Yeah.
Because that's square. All the dimensional changes take place in the back of the guitar.
And the linen strip or the cotton stripping or webbing or whatever,
There's no, back when Martin used that, they quit using it because it didn't work.
okay.
Okay? I have from our original rolls of the side cloth side bracing.
Yeah.
It does not, it won't stop a crack,
Okay.
it won't prevent a crack. It may hold it from
Yeah.
humidity cracking,
Yeah.
but that'd be about it.
What's that on the X-rays? They put a little circle on the X-rays?
I don't do it because, and here's a serious, that's a very good, I'm glad you asked. Martin shapes all their bracing rounded before they put them together. You notice these are put together square and then rounded?
Yeah.
I have no gap. There is absolutely no gap there. And when I'm rounding this bracing, when I'm going back to shape it all, I make a little mark as to where I'm going to start, and I radius and round it. But that is one of my keys to strength.
Huge. So it stays square there.
Pardon?
It stays square in the center,
Yeah.
it stays flat.
It's square against square, where theirs is, if you take the 2 round tops, you've got a gap on either side where it's rounded in. And so they put a piece of T-shirt. In fact, if somebody in the shop is taking a class and has a T-shirt on and wants one, I go, zip, and say, here. You gotta have a sense of humor to take the class. But at any rate, I'm over at my table at wherever that place is, that I hope to be able to find again, if somebody leads me back. I seriously am there with answers, and you are not interrupting me, you are not bothering me. As long as I'm not actively selling somebody something, I'm there to answer, what have you tried, what if, and I'm not past my learning curve, hopefully. That's a hopefully. But as I say, I welcome people to take a look or a listen to the guitars that I have on display. And I have always tried to do whatever the best I can is, and hope that it's good enough. So I want to say thank you to everybody that showed up, and I hope that I've been whatever it was you expected me to be. And this is fun. It's fun for me.